When the young man brought his grandfather's old uniform to the tailor, he thought it was just fabric and thread. Heavy, worn wool, brass buttons faded by time, and the shadow of a rank on the shoulders that no one recognized anymore. For Leo, it was just a quiet relic from the past, found in a trunk in the attic. But for the old tailor, who had spent a lifetime amid scissors and measuring tapes in the dim light of his shop, it was different. He didn't see a uniform, he saw a secret. He ran his finger over an almost invisible stitch and asked a question that chilled the young man to the bone. "Your grandfather was in Operation Tempest, wasn't he?" The problem was, Operation Tempest had never officially existed. Leo simply froze, standing before the old man. "I'm sorry," was all he could manage. His voice was a faint whisper in the shop's dusty air. He had entered this small shop on a forgotten city street by chance. Unlike the bright modern stores online, this place was a fortress against time. A faded sign in the window read, "Samuel's Fine Tailoring," and the scent of mothballs and hot iron that hit him as he stepped inside had taken him back to his childhood. Samuel was a man in his 70s with glasses, his shoulders slightly stooped from a life bent over a sewing machine. His hands were calloused with 1,000 needle pricks, shaped by the patience of a true craftsman. When Leo had placed the uniform on the table, he'd noticed a brief spark in Samuel's eyes, but he had assumed it was just appreciation for a quality piece of work from a bygone era. He was wrong. The old tailor looked at Leo's bewildered face. There was no mockery in his eyes, no curiosity, just the weight of a deep, ancient knowledge. "Operation Tempest," he repeated, his voice clearer this time. "The winter of '78, the northern frontier. Your grandfather was Captain Arthur, wasn't he?" Leo took a step back. His grandfather, Arthur, had passed away 10 years ago. He remembered him as a quiet, distant, but kind man. His war medals were kept in a box, but he never spoke of them. Everyone in the family knew he had been an honorable soldier, and that was all. His military records showed nothing more than a few standard duties and an honorable discharge. There was no mention of any Operation Tempest. How do you know my grandfather?" Leo stammered. "And what is that operation?" Samuel slowly spread the uniform out on the counter. He stroked the fabric as if touching a living thing. "More than know him, Leo," he said softly. "Your grandfather and we spoke a language nobody else knew, and it was a language written with thread." The old man pointed to an old wooden stool beneath the counter. "Sit down, son," he said. "It seems your grandfather has a story he never told you, and this uniform is its last witness." As if hypnotized, Leo sat on the stool. The noise of the world outside completely vanished. There was only this small shop, an old tailor, and a half-century-old secret hidden inside a uniform. Samuel pointed again to that faint stitch. It was sewn just under the collar, inside the lining. It wasn't a different color or thickness from the other stitches, but its pattern was different. 3 short dashes, a dot, and then a slightly curved line. To an untrained eye, it was a completely meaningless decoration. "Our unit was called the Ghost Weavers," Samuel began. "We didn't exist in any official records. Our budget, our maps, even our names were classified. We were a phantom team, the ones who did the jobs the government called impossible, whose very existence was denied. Everyone had a specialty: demolitions, communications, interrogation. Your grandfather, Arthur, was our leader. He was a genius at reading people and making the right call in even the most chaotic moments." Leo listened in silence. The image of his quiet, gardening grandfather was slowly shattering in his mind, replaced by the silhouette of a mysterious soldier he had never known. My job was different, Samuel continued. I wasn't in the field. Not most of the time. I was their armor. I was their voice. I was their tailor. A sad smile appeared on his face as he said the last word. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But our uniforms weren't just made of wool and cotton. They were instruments of communication. What do you mean? Leo whispered. These stitches, Samuel said, pointing to the strange pattern again. This was our alphabet. Before every mission, I would sew a special message into each soldier's uniform. This stitch confirms your grandfather's identity. The 3 short dashes indicate his rank, the dot his unit, and the curved line his specialty, leader. If one of our men was captured and his uniform fell into enemy hands, these stitches would mean nothing to them, but to us, they meant everything. Samuel pulled a small, tarnished magnifying glass from a drawer and handed it to Leo. Look, he said, that's not all. Leo took the magnifier and moved it closer to the uniform's cuff. There, in the line of stitching right next to the buttons, he saw a thread that was microscopically shorter than the others, almost unnoticeable. This indicated the mission's status, Samuel explained. If the thread was long, the mission was going as planned. If it was short, it meant, I'm in danger. Being followed may need help. This was a silent cry for help that your grandfather sent me on the 4th day of Operation Tempest. His heart pounding, Leo looked up. Operation Tempest, what was it? Samuel took a deep breath. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, it was as if he had left the small shop and traveled to a snow-covered, windswept mountainside. It was all about a scientist, he began. Dr. Finch, a genius in his field, but he was working for the wrong side. He was developing a technology for a hostile nation that could cripple the communications of an entire region. Our mission was to destroy that technology and, if possible, bring Dr. Finch over to our side. The facility was an impregnable fortress near the summit of the most rugged mountains in the north. Infiltrating it was like a suicide mission. That's why the operation was named Tempest, because only in the middle of a storm, in the chaos, could we get in unnoticed. It was one of the cruelest nights of the harsh winter of 1978. The blizzard reduced the giant pine trees to mere whispers, cutting visibility down to a few feet. For the ghost weavers, it was the perfect cover. The 6-man team, led by Captain Arthur, moved like ghosts through the night in their all-white camouflage. As they reached the outer walls of the facility, the wind howled so fiercely it was deafening. The team's communications expert whispered, "Signal jammers are active, Captain. It's completely deaf and dumb in there." Arthur nodded. This was their advantage, but it also meant that if something went wrong, they would have no contact with the outside world. That was why the silent alphabet Samuel had stitched into the uniforms was vital. They could convey basic information with just visual contact, without using a radio. Samuel was on that mission too. It was one of his rare field assignments. He was stationed in a small, abandoned hunter's cabin a few miles below the facility. His job was to make last-minute equipment adjustments for the team and provide a safe house in an emergency. But his real duty was the stitches. If a team member failed to return, Samuel would report the messages on the last-seen uniforms to headquarters, providing priceless information about the soldier's fate. The first 3 days of the operation went as planned. The team managed to infiltrate the lower levels of the facility. But on the 4th day, something unexpected happened. The facility's security chief launched an unscheduled inspection. The team was trapped in a ventilation shaft. It was then that Arthur noticed the small detail on his cuff. The danger stitch on the uniform of one of his men, codenamed Raven, had been activated. But next to the stitch was an additional mark that only Samuel and Arthur knew, a cross. It meant betrayal. One of their own had led them into a trap. Arthur had to make a decision instantly: abort the mission and retreat, or press on without knowing who the traitor was. Retreating meant leaving Dr. Finch's technology in enemy hands. Continuing meant risking the lives of his entire team. In that moment, he demonstrated his legendary leadership. He split the team. He and his two most trusted men would continue with the main objective, regardless of the traitor. The other three would retreat to Samuel's cabin. It was one of the hardest decisions Arthur ever made. Splitting his team meant weakening them. When the three returning soldiers reached Samuel's cabin, he knew one of them was the traitor. As he served them tea, he surreptitiously checked their uniforms. And he found him. A small, specific knot in the bootlaces of the soldier, codenamed Raven, was another secret sign, one that indicated he was communicating with the enemy. Samuel's heart felt like it would burst from his chest. He was not a field agent. He was a craftsman. But in that moment, he had to prove he was part of the team. The traitor was waiting for the other two soldiers to fall asleep. But Samuel acted first. He had put a powerful sedative in the tea of the other two, putting them safely to sleep, and confronted the traitor alone. "The operation is over, Raven," Samuel said, holding an old hunting rifle. The traitor laughed. "You? A tailor is going to stop me?" Just then, the cabin door burst open, and a snow-covered figure stormed in. It was Captain Arthur. He had completed the mission. He had destroyed Dr. Finch's lab but had been unable to bring the scientist back. And now he had returned to save the last piece of his team. Arthur neutralized the traitor with a single move. Then, exhausted, he turned to Samuel. "Thanks for the stitches, Samuel," he said. "Without them, none of us would have made it off this mountain alive." When Samuel's story ended, the silence in the small shop was once again filled by the ticking of the wall clock. Leo's eyes were filled with tears. His grandfather wasn't just a soldier. He was a true leader who protected his men in the darkest of times, who silently carried the heaviest burdens. And Samuel, he wasn't just a tailor. He was an unsung hero who saved lives with his needle and wrote history with his thread. "Your grandfather was never the same after that operation," Samuel said sadly. "What he saw, who he lost, it buried him in silence. The Ghost Weavers unit was disbanded, all records destroyed, as if we never existed. But we did. And this uniform is the proof." Leo touched the uniform with trembling hands. He no longer saw it as just an old piece of clothing. He saw a story in every stitch, a sacrifice in every fiber. The empty spaces he had wondered about for so many years regarding his grandfather now made sense. The reason for his silence wasn't that he had nothing to be proud of, but that he carried memories too heavy to speak of. "This tear," Leo said, pointing to the small rip on the uniform's shoulder. "I wanted to get this repaired." Samuel smiled. "That tear," he said, "it's not a mistake. It happened that day during the struggle with the traitor. I never repaired it. Your grandfather didn't want me to, because it reminded us how fragile everything is, and that even the strongest armor can have a weak point." The old tailor stood up and went to a small room in the back of the shop. He returned with an old vest made of the same military-grade fabric. On the vest was the exact same strange stitch pattern as on Leo's grandfather's uniform. "Every ghost weaver had his own signature," Samuel said. "This one is mine." Leo didn't know what to say anymore. To say thank you felt inadequate. He hadn't just brought a uniform to the shop that day. He had brought his grandfather's lost legacy, and Samuel had given it back to him. He folded the uniform carefully. "Don't repair it, Samuel," he said. "Let it stay this way, just like the story you told." Samuel nodded. "Your grandfather would be proud of you." When Leo left the shop, the evening sun was leaving an orange glow between the buildings. The uniform in his hands felt heavier now, but it wasn't the weight of the fabric. It was the weight of knowledge, of respect, and of a sacrifice finally understood. Some stories of heroism are told on battlefields, in headlines. They are honored with medals and ceremonies, but others, the greatest, are the quietest ones. They are hidden in the dim light of a forgotten shop, in the tip of a needle, in the patience of a thread. Leo didn't just learn who his grandfather was that day. He learned that a hero's legacy can be carried not just in medals, but sometimes in an invisible stitch. And most importantly, he understood that true legends never really die. They just wait silently for the right person to come and listen to their story.